Hello, it's Matt. This is the 10-Minute Bible Hour podcast, and I would like to open today by talking about two crippling controversies regarding the book of Esther. They're not that big a deal at all, and I'm actually just going to take a minute on it, and then we're going to get back into the party stuff we've been talking about the last couple of days. Controversial question number one. Are we sure we're talking about Xerxes here? Because in some translations of the Bible, his name is rendered as Ahasuerus. I think I'm saying that right. It's a tricky name to pronounce. The answer to the question is the larger context, the extra-biblical context, and the stuff that we hear from writers in the ancient world, all of that adds up to clearly point to Xerxes being the king here. And that name Ahasuerus is a pretty obvious Hebraification of the Greek Xerxes, which is a pretty obvious Greekification of the old Persian Kashayarshan. So Persian is a mouthful, Greek is a mouthful, Hebrew is a mouthful, and you just can't neatly go between them. So in the same way that you've got different names for Shadrach, Meshach, Abednego, Daniel, between their Hebrew names and their Babylonian names, so the name of this particular king is rendered in different ways, but it squares and it adds up with almost complete certainty. This is the king we are talking about, even if you happen to use a translation that goes with the literal rendering of the name in the Hebrew, Ahasuerus. See, that was a fun, controversial question. What a nice way to start. Let's keep chasing these controversial feelings by doing one more of these. The question is, what's the deal with there being 127 provinces listed here at the beginning of the book of Esther? The first verse says, this is what happened during the time of Xerxes. Xerxes who ruled over 127 provinces stretching from India to Cush. The reason there's a question there is because Herodotus and other extra-biblical sources tell us that there were somewhere in the mid-20s in terms of the number of satrapies, satrapy governed by a satrap in the Persian Empire. That was the largest subunit of government beneath the whole kingdom, the whole empire. But it looks like what we're getting both here in Esther and over in Daniel, which is recording things that happened a little bit earlier on in the Persian Empire, is a description of an even smaller subunit, that being provinces, those provinces probably being a reflection of significant cities around the empire and an orbit around those particular cities. So on the one hand, it's very reasonable to look at the first verse or two of the book of Esther and be like, oh, I got a couple of questions here. Awesome. I think those are pretty easy to tackle. But on the other hand, we can look at this stuff on the front end of the book of Esther and realize, dang, this guy is a really big deal with previously in all of human history unmatched power. He is to be taken seriously, which makes it all the more surprising when we discover that he has some insecurity issues that manifest throughout the book of Esther and that manifest in extra-biblical sources about him. But you know what? Don't we all? And in particular, don't those insecurities come out more at parties than anywhere else? Why are those so hard? They're fun, right? Parties are good. You look forward to it. But let's be honest, there's only a teeny tiny percentage of people who just thrive in that social environment. And they're like, I cannot wait for next Friday night when that party is going to happen. I cannot wait for that rehearsal dinner. Everything is mapped out. I am going to work that room. I'm going to connect with everybody. I'm going to dominate that party. Most people don't think that way. Most of us are like, parties are like a microscope. They're like a magnifying glass that always just seem to hover right in front of everything that's wrong with me. And then the magnifying glass that floats around in front of my face hovers over everything that's awesome about everyone else. It's an odd environment. It's challenging, and I think it's okay to admit that. Well, according to extra-biblical accounts, this 180-day party/war council that Xerxes conducted at the front end of the book of Esther was a doozy. He was all over the place. He got visited, according to extra-biblical sources, by some ethereal being giving him occasionally conflicting instructions. He made big sweeping commands in front of everybody and then pulled them back and changed them and made them again. He's already feeling a little tipsy, a little insecure, probably a little bit nervous about the fact that they all just agreed to go and invade another civilization that he's going to stake his entire reputation on going to fight against. And probably the last thing he wants is any guff from his woman. What he does want from his woman, on the other hand, is once everybody's super drunk at the war party, he wants to show off that he is the king, has the prettiest wife of all of the wives. And so this happens in Esther 1, presumably after decisions about invading Greece had been made. Queen Vashti, verse 9, also gave a banquet for the women in the royal palace of King Xerxes. Now, we don't have an extra biblical record of this Queen Vashti character, but like we were talking about at the beginning of this conversation, there's a lot of different names. So it's possible that there's a Greekification or an old Persianification here. This could correspond to somebody we know about, but what we do know is that the well-attested to wife of Xerxes is somebody named Amestris, and she is fierce. Xerxes' mom, Atassa, the daughter of Cyrus the Great, she was fierce. Amestris was fierce, murderous, clever, conniving, by all accounts, stunningly beautiful. Is this the same person as Queen Vashti? Well, as we're going to see as we work forward in Esther 1, it looks like Vashti is out of the equation pretty quickly. So my guess is this is probably one of many queens that Xerxes had at one point or another, and that she does not correspond to the queen we know about from extra-biblical history, that being Amestris, but obviously we're going to talk about that a whole bunch more. Whatever the case turns out to be, this Queen Vashti, she's in charge of throwing the party for the ladies, I guess because they're not invited to the war talks or whatever, and maybe things are getting crazy over there. Maybe they're not quite getting as crazy over there. Maybe the vibe of these two parties isn't feeling the same, and Xerxes in his euphoria about arriving at an accord regarding this invasion, and with quite a bit of booze in his system, imagines that the party for the ladies is probably just as erotic and weird and sloppy and goofy as what's going on with the dudes. So he just decides to invite her to come over. We're going to cross-pollinate a little bit. On the seventh day, verse 10, when King Xerxes was in high spirits from wine, he commanded the 7 eunuchs who serve him, oh boy, here we go, Mehuman, Biztha, Harbona, Bigtha, Abagtha, it was Abagtha all along, Zethar, and Carcass, to bring before him Queen Vashti wearing her royal crown in order to display her beauty to the people and nobles, for she was lovely to look at. Did you notice what articles of clothing were present in what King Xerxes demanded Vashti wear to come and entertain the noblemen? It was a crown. Did you notice what articles of clothing were absent from what he commanded her to wear? Everything else. Look, the truth of the matter is we're going to see euphemisms throughout the book of Esther. It chooses not to go all the way down to the nth degree of detail on some of these more adult subjects, but it assumes that the audience is going to be able to look at what's going on and be like, well, dang, that was pretty messed up. And I think this is the first of our, well, dang, that was pretty messed up moments. And in a way, I suppose this is King Xerxes trying to flaunt a conquest he's already achieved as a little foretaste of a conquest that he and his buddies are going to go achieve by crushing those Greeks later on. I think this is born out of boastfulness. I think it's born out of insecurity. And tomorrow we're going to look at how Queen Vashti reads the situation and how she responds to it. Final thing. I was sitting here this morning getting ready to turn on the mic and do this, and it occurred to me that this is the coolest job in the world, that I get to talk about something I'm absolutely excited about with people who are also excited about. And I get to do that because all of you are interested and are willing to listen, and further, I'm able to do it and put time and attention into it because some of you support the program. So thank you for everybody who does that in any way. It super means a lot. Yep, that was it. Just thanks. All right, I'm Matt. This is the 10-Minute Bible Hour Podcast. Let's do this again soon.